Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Malafakis, CEO and Associate Vice Dean of Wharton Executive Education. It's my honor to welcome you all here again to join us for the Wharton Ready series, where we bring you thought leadership from Wharton faculty that is particularly relevant to the challenges we face now with the global pandemic. We wish you all safe passage and safety and strength and resiliency for you and your loved ones during this time, and we hope that these webinars are both an opportunity for you to get new ideas as well as find resilient ways of working through this. Before I pass this over to Professor Mike Useem, I'd like to draw your attention to how to ask questions. Many of you have been here before. We're happy you're back. For those who are new, please see the right-hand side toolbar where you see a Q&A icon. That's the icon you use if you have any questions for Professor Useem. And during his presentation, Professor Useem will be asking you some questions. Please type those into the Q&A section. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the moderator icon, which has the silhouette of the person, to type in any technical issues. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Professor Useem, who is bringing us such a relevant topic. And the title is, We Are All Leaders Now, Seizing the Leadership Moment. Professor Useem, the floor is yours.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who have joined us from many different time zones, I am sure. So I'll say a good morning, but also a good afternoon and probably a good evening to some of you. We're going to pick up right now on a couple live casts that we've already done. One by Mauro Guillen, Preparing for Business Impact of COVID-19. Well, that seems like a topic of the day for sure. And then from our Dean, Jeff Garrett, a prior live cast focused on leading in uncertain times. Those are our times now. And my intent in the next, less than 30 minutes now, is to walk through how we all might think about exercising our own leadership at this particular moment. I'm going to offer up a couple academic findings. I've got some questions that I'm going to throw at you. And then towards the end, be ready, I'm going to ask you to sum up on the leadership capacities that are going to be vital for you. I'm going to have a few of you share that out, your thinking that will be vital for everybody else. So here we go with the, let's call it the more academic side of our time together. First of all, a statement about uncertainty and change, and I'm going to go somewhere with that in just a second. I've got 6 bullets here of what you all are experiencing. If you happen to be working in and around Macy's, you know Macy's has furloughed over 100,000 people as it's closed virtually all of its stores. This is a period of momentous change and enormous uncertainty. A couple other figures on that page. You'll have a copy, by the way, of all this, so don't worry about the particulars, but everybody dramatically affected, whether in business or beyond. Here are a couple of very important academic premises or academically confirmed premises for what we're doing, which is to ask 2 questions, and here are the answers. When does leadership make greatest difference? Well, leadership is pretty vital for good times and bad times, but it makes a difference above all in uncertain and changing times. That's a statistical finding. I think we can readily relate to that from our own experience. And then the second very important finding, which shapes how we think about leadership development within Wharton Executive Education, is that leadership is not just from the top person, maybe one of you or the top dog, to borrow a phrase there, but research has repeatedly found that the impact of the top people or the top one or the top many is most consequential when we look at the top many. And thus, leadership from above, leadership from the middle, and leadership for the front line, because of that research finding right there, is going to guide our thinking as we move forward. And just a final graph on the right-hand side right there that, for us, certainly confirms why we need to have leadership at the forefront of our thinking right now, because even in good times, the graph is from good times and not the kind of current crisis we're all in. If we can get the right CEO, in this case, number 1 in that graph, the middle bar, if we recruit a poor successor, I'll put it that way, to a retiring CEO, got to ask everything kind of net of everything else that can drive a company's performance, does that one poorly performing CEO successor come in and have direct, tangible impact on company performance? And if so, how much? And then we can also look then at a CEO successor number 2, the right-hand bar, and by comparing their heights net of everything else, the tell there to the left is one example where we see this kind of replacement. If CEO number 1 is replaced pretty quickly within a year or two by a better performing CEO number 2, as happened at Mattel, the difference can be as much as 30% variance around where we are now. And those numbers go up for sure during a crisis. And thus, good to think about what really defines the best of leadership when it really matters. Many ways to go about that. I think the simplest one for our purposes right now is just to have you take a look at 8 of the towering figures of the last century. I think we can probably identify everybody up there until we get to the right-hand column, lower corner. That's George C. Marshall, the top-ranking uniformed officer for the U.S. during World War II, later winner of the Nobel Peace Prize for the Marshall Plan. But Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, I think we've got a pretty good fix on the 8. So I'd like a couple of you now to, into Ed Sierra, who's going to be our moderator. Would you please send him an instant message right now answering the question there at the top of the page? What is the capacity, to elaborate a little bit, that all 8 of these individuals shared when they led their world, whether India, Martin Luther King, the US, Nelson Mandela, Margaret Thatcher, UK? What is the common thread that applies to all 8? So, Ed, if you can offer up a couple of the answers that I hope are flowing in.
Sure. Just a reminder to please use the question and answer function to type this response. And Mike, we'll give it a second here.
Okay.
We have one response. We have transparency, inspiring vision. Vision, another one for vision. Need to rise to the occasion. Being a risk taker. Transformational leadership. Trust. Ownership. Perseverance.
All right, Ed, let me hold it.
Resilience.
Yeah, thank you for being so swift in that uptake, everybody. This is a collective learning experience. Everything that I've heard so far, trust, transparency, risk-taking, all that certainly makes sense to me. I think we're pretty familiar with this terrain. But now let me make another statement as a way to where we're going. Ideas are ideas. I'm an academic. In the life of the mind is much of what I spend my time on, but I'm also extremely mindful that these ideas are, in a sense, pragmatically useless if we can't translate them into what we actually do. So I'm going to ask you now to take that into the following circumstance and imagine you're the chief executive of Marriott. You announced a couple weeks ago now that you're closing virtually all your properties around the world, and you're going to furlough almost all, or at least well over 100,000 of your employees. You're about to communicate through a video message to the entire company, all 175,000 employees. Would you please, I'm going to give you a couple seconds heads up on this, would you please, through the Q&A function again to Ed, taking what we've just said about Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa, and now translate that into what you, as Mr. Sorensen, would do as CEO of a badly affected company from COVID-19. The question there at the bottom says it again, what should be stressed and how will you say it? So 2 issues there. What do you want to get across and how do you want to say it? So Ed, as soon as you get a couple thoughts in, why don't we pick up on them and we'll work with them.
Okay, Mike, just a reminder to please use the Q&A section to answer these 2 questions.
All right, people, don't be shy. We need common guidance here. So what are you going to do as the CEO? Your production people have said, Mr. Sorensen, you're on camera.
We have finding opportunities in chaos, continuity of superlative customer service. Ongoing communications will be transparent, open, honest, and frequent communications, and will include how it impacts you. What the future will look like and how to stay true to our vision and purpose is another one.
And let's go
Empathy.
for one more.
Mike?
Yep, got
Empathy
that.
is one coming in. That's a frequent one. Another one would be industry knowledge and strong leadership.
Great. Wonderful commentary. I'm in agreement with, made, in fact, note of everything that's just been said. Let me then move to a very related issue. Each of those important, and then there's a second statement. All are important, and we're going to be remiss if, even though we're empathetic, we don't reference the future. And with that, I will bring up then what I tend to call a checklist. You can call it a roadmap. You can call it a 3x5 card with the must-dos. But picking up on what you have said, putting it in somewhat different terminology, but it's right here as well. Look at number 11, manage relations and emotions. So the reference to empathy, I would put right there. This is like a reminder list. So when you face people working for you, not only those below you, but those maybe your peers and sometimes above you, here's a kind of a working summary, in a sense, of what you just said. And a checklist, of course, means this, that everything here is mission critical. To turn that upside down, in a crisis like we're in now, you probably don't want to work for somebody who's not strategic. So that's mission critical. You probably don't want to work for a person, number 4, who does not bring integrity to the table. So quick summary by reference to the word checklist. Pardon me. This is kind of call it a crib sheet, or just a message to yourself of the don't forgets. All are pretty important. And in fact, look at number 16 there at the bottom. We'll come back to that in a bit. Leading down, out, and up. With that said, I'm going to emphasize number 2, number 6, and number 7. I should have put number 7 in red. I did not. But for me, these are 3 of the most important. Everything's important, but 3 of the most important leadership capacities, whether it's good times or very adverse times. And each needs to be expanded. That is, we got to think, what does it mean to think strategically, or communicate persuasively, or decide decisively? A lot of words here on this slide. I really leave this for future reference. Everything you're going to have. A quick reference, or a quick illustration, I should say, to the chief executive of Vanguard Group a couple of years ago, as he became chief executive back in 2008. His name is Bill McNabb. Many of you will recognize the name. Many of you have your assets under his management when he was there. And he took control of, he became chief executive 2 CEOs after the famous Jack Bogle got the company going in just the days around 2008 and the Lehman failure. And it was, of course, cataclysmic for an asset manager like us all. And here's the illustration of thinking strategically. He was convinced that the market eventually would come back. And when it did come back, it might come back in spades. And for that, he was going to need virtually everybody he had right now, but he didn't have the pay to pay them all the full freight that they had been receiving. But he made a critical decision, thinking strategically, that he wanted to retain all of his employees and bear the brunt of the setback by cutting his own salary and that of many others, but laying nobody off. And on that one, he certainly got lucky, but he also was thinking strategically. The market did come back. And while the assets back in 2005, a couple of years before the crisis of 2008 under management, Vanguard were in the vicinity of about $1 trillion. Today, with the huge return and staff in place to accommodate the return, before he stepped down, there were more than $5 trillion in assets under management. That's meant to simply expand out a bit, thinking strategically. I've got an example under decide decisively. And just to offer a more academic commentary on communicating persuasively, I and a couple of colleagues back in 0809 interviewed a number of chief executives. And simple question, what's most on your mind at the moment for what you bring to the table or should bring to the table during that financial crisis? And from all of the 14 chief executives, including the chief executive then of Northrop Grumman, you've got to be out there talking with your investors, with the board of directors, with your top team, 3 layers down and the front line. There's no such thing as over communicating. So that's simply to reference the 3 pieces off that longer checklist: communicate persuasively, decide decisively, and think strategically. I've got a couple slides, won't go through them, that are intended to help you out by way of what you're going to have in front of you. A couple ways to define or kind of flesh out, so to speak, how to think strategically in more tangible ways. Got the same thing from intuitive to what I've referenced here as from intuitive to deliberative decision making. From my standpoint, this is a part of strategic thinking. We got to be careful about our own biases. Many of you have read the famous book by Daniel Kahneman, cited there at the bottom, which is great guidance on how to think more deliberatively in order to think more strategically. I'm going to skip ahead now a couple slides and we're coming to, in about 3 minutes, a summary, and then I'm going to throw it over to you to throw questions and comments into the pool via Ed. I'd like you to take a look at Lawrence Goldborn, who was the Minister of Mines for the Republic of Chile back in 2010 when the famous cave-in occurred with 33 people about a half mile below the surface of the desert in northern Chile. And I'd like your eyes to go to question number 4, because it's really going to be our summary point for me. And that is, he was charged by the president, the Minister of Mines, was charged by the president of Chile to effect the rescue. He was not a miner by background. He was not a professional engineer by way of background. He ran actually a very large store in Chile. So he's going to have to enlist others to lead the rescue. And this now is a statement that's really going to get us to the end of my commentary today with questions and comments to come from you in a second. I've spent a lot of time with Lawrence Goldborn trying to understand what he did do to enlist others to help lead the rescue. And he said there were really 3 very important parties that led to the successful withdrawal of the miners, 33 victims who were half mile down, 3 months later. He said, I first of all had to form a really tough-minded and quick-acting team here on the surface of the mining area, shown there in the photo to the left. I needed a mining engineer, or a bunch of mining engineers. I needed a social worker. I had to set up a school for the school children of the fathers who were down under. And thus, for the rescue, I needed the leadership of people who were here. Then I needed the leadership of the chief executive of the country, the president. I, through him, brought in equipment from the U.S. and elsewhere. And of course, I depended upon the leadership of the shift supervisor down with the miners down below. He had to keep them alive until I could get the shaft to them. So it's really a statement that leadership, while we tend to think of it as something unique or a part of the obligation of people in high rank, Lawrence Goldborn told me in unequivocal terms, the rescue was a product of those on the front line, the people at my level, and then people above me. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to skip over 1 or 2 more slides now. I'd like you to think, and then I'll let it go quiet for maybe 15 seconds. And thinking back on the checklist and thinking back on the 8 individuals we had in front of us a few minutes back, For your own leader's checklist in the weeks and months ahead in this extraordinary period, I'd like you to think of, for you, what are going to be one or two or maybe even three of the most important principles for your own personal checklist. So Ed, as soon as we, within about 10 seconds, begin to get a couple comments in, we're now going to write the textbook, so to speak, for leading in a period of great uncertainty. And wherever we may be top executive, we may be in the C-suite, we may be totally frontline. Ed, over to you.
Okay, so we have humility came in. What else do we have here, Mike? Communicate often. We have three here. We have integrity, radical candor, and possibility. We have safety of other people around. Being the communicator in chief. I've seen a couple of those come in. Quite a few people like that one. Think strategic. A couple of people have posted that. Ensure a backup. I've seen a couple of those.
Great. Ed, let's go for one more.
So communicate and empathy kind of go hand in hand.
All right. I've taken notes, everybody. I'm hoping you're doing the same thing. Let's see. Humility, communicate often, integrity, radical candor, worry about and focus on the safety of others. You are the communicator in chief. Think strategically. And let's see. Ensure a backup. I know there are a couple others, but let me leave it at that. Now, that's not exactly what was on that leader's checklist before, but that doesn't matter. What's vital for you now is for you to have your own working checklist. And that's part one. So remind yourself not of the one or two qualities you're going to have to exhibit if you're, for example, the CEO of Marriott or doing what you're doing today, but you probably need a half dozen. I can't get my list below about 15. But let me ask you to do this. Work on it yourself. You've heard your colleagues here reference a number of qualities. And I would say put down 4 or 5, maybe even up to 10 that you can literally use today or tomorrow, or should use today or tomorrow. Another question, I'm going to leave it just as a question, is once we know we want to be more humble in our demeanor, recognizing we don't know everything. For example, a vital second question, we won't get into it, is how do you actually help yourself become better at that? Do you need a coach on that? Do you need to read about that? We'll leave that for further discussion. I'm mindful of the need for at least 4 or 5 minutes of conversation. So, Ed, I'm just simply going to open it up. I'd like people, if they wouldn't mind, to send Ed on the Q&A function a couple final thoughts. Let me put it in the affirmative from your own experience that others would well take heed of, or if you've got a question, I can pick up on questions too. Ed, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. And we do have a lot of great questions coming in. Over 700 have actually come in throughout the course of the half hour. So we have a lot of good feedback and questions coming in. Mike, one of the major ones I'm seeing right now is this more clarification around what exactly leading down, out, and up actually mean. So maybe if you could spend a minute maybe clarifying that a little bit. That seems to be a hot topic amongst the questions.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, I'm going to hold on to that for a second because that is going to be my summary commentator. It's totally on the mark, but let me hold off for about 2 minutes. Let's get 1 or 2 more questions, and I'll definitely come back to that one.
Mike, what role do you see for political leaders in these times? That is another hot topic coming in as well.
All right, let me, because we only got a couple of minutes, and I know you've all got a very busy day or a busy night, depending on your time zone. Let me pick up on political leaders and just the world's a stage, or my parlance, the world is a fantastic classroom. And so political leaders for us have been, it's a leadership class. We've all watched the President of the United States. We've watched the governor of New York State. We've watched the Chancellor of Germany. And let me just say as a suggestion, take a look, ask yourself what they're doing right that would affect how you want to exercise your own leadership, and what they were doing that's going to be different. Political leadership is similar to, but different from business leadership. And a good thing that also ask yourself, what are they doing that you can't import? But equally, what are they doing that is just like what you're doing, and you might learn from them, whether the Chancellor of Germany or the President of the United States or the Governor of New York State. So let me turn, I regret we don't have more time. Wish I had time with you. Just a quick thanks, and I'm going to end on a substantive point. Really appreciate your taking the time to join us. I think we've all learned from each other. That's the whole point of what we're doing. And on this issue of leading down, out, and up, let me end on that as follows. When I first got into the business of teaching leadership at the Wharton School, I do that in the MBA program and our executive MBA program, and I work with many enterprises outside of Penn, and of course through executive education. Leadership for me was really textbook focus on the top person, the CEO, the leader of a medical center, or the governor of a state. But over time, I've come to conclude, go back to Lawrence Goldborn and effecting the rescue in Chile, that that's not enough. We need leadership next to us. We need our peers to be working with us in collaboration. We need leadership below us. That's part of the calling that's on the leader's checklist. Part of the calling to remember, one of the most important things you're doing is preparing your successor, or the people that one day will have your job for the issues ahead. Also, leading up. It's ironic. It almost sounds like it's a self-contradiction, but helping people above you take actions, in this case, to protect the workplace and come back, be ready for the comeback. They're busy. Sometimes they're not thinking fully strategically. And thus, in the case of Lawrence Goldborn, for example, he called his president of Chile, a person named Sebastian Piñera, and he said, Senor President, we don't have equipment. I know that. I don't know how to ask the United States for it. I would like you to exercise your leadership in calling the White House, which he did, to request equipment, and the president delivered it to Chile. It was very important in the rescue in the end. So, final point, and I'm going to end on this and turn the baton back here to Mike to close this out. Leadership is us, and it's all around us. Got to get our own leadership well honed, well developed, and that's why I put the leadership checklist in front of us. And on that checklist is the notion we've also got to think about how to get the most from our neighbors, our peers, our boss, the CEO, the owners of the enterprise, and those at the front line. So, Mike, that's it from me. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to hand the baton back to Mike Malafakis.
Mike, thank you so much. Professor Useem, it was a huge honor to have you with us, and thank you for emphasizing the fact that leadership is not an individual performance. It is really the actions of all of us and how we all impact each other with our own leadership. And I would just recommend that, Professor Useem's checklist is so valuable for each of us as individual leaders, but also you can work this with your teams and have your teams analyze the list and have them come up with what they see as their leadership strengths and what is going to be necessary to get us through these times. Again, from all of us at Wharton, safe passage, best wishes for resiliency, strength, and safety and good health during these challenging times. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at the same time, which is 10 a.m. Eastern US, and we look forward to having everyone from across the globe reconnect. Thank you all. Be safe.